Hi, everybody. It's Leslie with the Small Business Development Center, and I'm here with Eric Spellman, who's going to be talking to us on Unleash a Flood of, let me see if I get this right. It's a long title today. Unleash a Flood of Leads with Landing Pages. Eric is such a dynamic speaker, and I've had a lot of emails that ask how they can watch Eric Spellman's webinars that they have seen the titles, but they don't know how to do it. So I'm going to chat that information over to you. Also, one of the titles that he has was Top 10 Mistakes Hackers Want You to Make. And it's so important. New Mexico Small Business Development Center wants to encourage all New Mexico small businesses to learn about cybersecurity risks and take precautions to protect their data, especially from ransomware. Last thing I'm going to say is if you have questions, type them into the Q&A because he picks them up throughout the entire webinar and he loves to answer those questions. So Eric Spellman, turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, this is an exciting topic because it's very near and dear to my heart, and that's getting leads. Trust me, everyone wants leads. Everyone wants the chance to sell their product to someone, and they actually want that someone to be, well, someone looking for what they sell. Because remember, we don't just want random people. Billboards are not lead generators really, because they shoot everyone hoping that someone who actually wanted what they sell was interested. So I'm not a big fan of the shotgun approach. Leads are qualified. In other words, they're actual people, in my opinion, who are seeking the type of services that you're offering. So let's get started and talk about these. Now, what is a lead? Well, like I said, it is different than a sale. You've got to understand the difference between a lead and a sale. A lot of people have their website and they want to make it to where it generates sales, but they don't understand what a sale is. When I talk about a sale, it's actually someone ordering something off your website, giving you their credit card, and then you simply shipping it to them. If they aren't giving a credit card on your website, then chances are they're not looking for sales. They're looking for leads. So keep that in mind. A sale only qualifies if you actually have a shopping cart on your website, if you actually have something that people can put products in and they actually pay you, kind of like Amazon. Amazon's goal is to generate sales. What I'm talking about is leads. Now, a lot of products and services, you really can't have a shopping cart on your site. You can't sell them that way. Good example, a realtor. A realtor, you can't put a house in a shopping cart and then check out with your credit card, at least not yet. But the realtor is looking for leads, not sales. The realtor is looking for someone wanting to sell their house or someone wanting to buy their house, and they're needing help doing that. So that's what I'm going to be talking about, is reaching out to leads. Now, keep in mind, in case you missed last week's or others that I've done videos, when people go to your website, there's no way, and I mean no way, for you to know who they were. We can see people's footsteps. We can see where they went on our website. We can even know how long they were there, and we know when they left. But there's no way to know who they are. Okay, the only way we know who someone is that visits our website is if they tell us. So when we're going after leads, basically, actually, we really want them to tell us who they are. We've got to convince them to tell us who they are. Most websites seek leads. Like I said, only sites with shopping carts are really going after sales. So you need to decide, is the service or product that I offer something that people can put in a shopping cart? Or do I really want them to call me or email me and I get to sell it to them either directly or in some other manner? You have to decide that. Now, like I said, most people are looking for leads. They're looking for people who want their products. A lead can be in the form of anything. It can be a form to email. For instance, if someone fills out your contact us form on your website, that actually gets turned into an email and sent to you. That can be a lead. A phone call can be a lead. In other words, if they on your website, pick up the phone, call the phone number on your website, it better be there. That can be a lead. Or it can be someone direct messaging you. We call them DMs. Direct message you through social media like Facebook or Instagram or one of the many others that are out there. A direct message asking you for more information is also a lead. So understand what a lead is, because if you don't, well, the rest of this presentation won't make much sense. Can you get leads from social media? Yes. And all you would need to do is apply some of the tricks and tips I'm going to give you right now in social media as well. Because the way I like to explain it is this. The goal is always to get people back to your website. Okay. Your website is what we call a conversion point. It's where we're trying to convert an anonymous window shopper into a named prospect or a lead. In other words, we want to capture as many of those anonymous lookers as we can and get them to tell us who they are. Social media can be one of those ways. I tell people all the time, your website is it's kind of like a wagon wheel, and your website is the hub of that wagon wheel. All the spokes coming into it are from all the different sources of traffic, like social media, like email newsletters, all those, or even you just telling someone to go to your website. All of those are directing traffic towards your website. Your website is where we convert them. So if you want to think of your website as a lead generating machine, the goal is to get as many people to it as possible and then have your website convert as many of those as possible from anonymous people to people you can contact. If your website is not a lead machine, if your website is not sending you leads every week, you better keep watching. So what is a landing page? It's not to be confused with a home page. I like to think of it as an orphan page. A landing page is a very specific page on your website, a very specific page, but no other page on your website links to it. That's why we call it an orphan. It has no parents. It has no other web page that links to it. It's off on its own. It's a little island out there. And the only way you get there, well, is from whatever you're doing to generate leads. Okay? There's a reason we want it to be an orphan page. Is because we want to measure if it's working. We want to measure uncontaminated traffic. Now, what do I mean by that? You see, a lot of people say, well, Eric, isn't my homepage, the first page of your website, isn't my homepage like a landing page? Well, technically it is, but you're going to get traffic from all over the place. So for instance, let's say that some vendor calls you up and says, our lead generation system will send you 20 leads a week. And they promise you that. How are you going to measure if it's working or not? Are you just going to depend on them to tell you that their system is working? How do you think that's going to work out? Of course, they're going to claim success. But you may have gotten those leads anyway without them. So the only way to verify that their little system is sending those leads to you is by creating a landing page, a page that is only reachable by whatever method these vendors are using. Okay? So we want to measure uncontaminated traffic. So your homepage really can't be a good measure of whether another vendor is working for you, because how are you going to know whether the traffic coming to you is because of them or not? You won't. So that's why it must be an orphan page, so that we know that all the traffic that came to it can only get there because of whatever it is we're doing, the one specific thing that we're doing. And yes, you can have multiple landing pages. I know companies who have hundreds of different landing pages, and they're using them to measure all the different ways that they're advertising. They don't send anybody to their homepage. They send everyone to landing pages. The goal of a landing page can also be to speak to a particular need. If your website has a variety of services or a variety of different types of customers that it sells to, well, a landing page can help divide that out. Websites that try to do too much, you land on them, you get to their homepage and you go, ugh, no, I don't want to do that. No, I want to do that. I don't want to do that. Oh, there, I want to do that. If they have to hunt through all the different options to get to what they're actually interested in, some people may not make it through the hunt. they may give up. But with a landing page, let's say that I sell spatulas and rolling pins, okay? Like in a bakery. So I might have one landing page for people who are interested in spatulas. And that whole page is about our amazing spatulas. And there'll be a whole different landing page about rolling pins. But see, if all of my different cooking products were all listed on the homepage, well, the people looking for spatulas and rolling pins may not see those specific two items right away. So creating separate landing pages, especially for your most popular products or your most popular services, can really help guide people in the right way, guide people to the right place on your website. The goal of a landing page, I mean, let's just get to the quick here, is to collect personal information, okay? The reason we're even sending them to a page is because we want them to tell us who they are. That's it. That's our goal. We're not trying to sell them anything. A landing page's goal is to collect information. And so instead of sending everyone to your contact us form, which most websites have, what you may want to consider is sending specific groups who want specific products or services directly to a landing page that speaks to that specific service or specific product. And like I said, home pages really can't be landing pages. I mean, they can for some people. If what you sell is really only one product, one thing, sure, your homepage can totally target that. And I tell people all the time, the purpose of your homepage, or the main page on your site that comes up when you type www.whatever.com, that page can be a landing page, like I said, but only if you sell basically one or two things at most. Okay. If you're like Amazon and you sell a whole bunch of stuff, there's no way, because there's no way you can list everything and expect people to find it within just a few seconds of scanning that homepage. So, what are the good ingredients of a landing page? Think of it like a recipe book. If we're going to build a landing page, what must be in it? And I'm going to spend time on each one of these things. So first, there's got to be a trust motivator. We've got to get them to trust us. Second, there's got to be a valuable trade. I'll explain that in just a minute. It's got to use powerful language. I'm telling you, the choice of words you use on your landing page can totally determine success or failure. You need a small capture form. We talked about that. There's a reason it needs to be small. You also need an effective delivery system. In other words, you want to make sure that you're getting these leads in whatever manner you set it up for. And then you must have a confirmation page. In other words, after they fill out the form, what page comes up next? And then finally, we're going to measure results. We're going to check to see what we did, rinse and repeat, and do it again. So let's start with the trust motivator. What do I mean by that? You've got to realize that the number one thing against you on the internet is trust. When people land on your website for the very first time, they don't trust you. They don't know you. You might say that your product is the best around, but do they believe it? No. Why? Because they have no reason to. See, if I knew you as a friend or been around you for a while or, talked to people you've done business with, then yes, I would trust you more. But most people who come to you on the internet have no clue who you are. And so the number one thing preventing them from telling you who they are, or from them doing business with you, or from them even calling you, is a lack of trust. They don't trust you. They don't know you, and they don't want to give their information to you. So what are some good trust motivators? How can we increase trust, or as I like to say, reduce the trust barrier that the customer has to get over? How can we do that? Well, one of my favorites, and you all know this if you watch me very long, I'm a huge fan of videos. And a video from the owner can really increase trust in complete strangers' eyes. And the reason for that is we tend to trust people more that we can look them in the eye. And yeah, this is totally psychological. Okay. It's one thing for me to write we will take care of you. It's another thing for me to look you in the eye and say, we will take care of you. You are more likely to trust someone that way because you're looking them in the eye. And like I said, that's a psychological thing. So video can really help. If there's like a video from the owner saying, hey, this is who we're about. This is what I believe, as it relates to our customers. And these are the kind of products. I remember one time I bought a bunk bed from Colorado, and it was made out of big old logs. It looked very log cabin. And I got the bunk bed in the mail, but there were no instructions. And so I opened it up, and sure enough, there was a little piece of paper, but on it was just a YouTube address. So I went to the YouTube address, and it was a video from the owner. And in that 60-minute video, the owner put together the exact bunk bed that I bought. He looked me in the eye and he said, hey, now, just so you know, these logs are blah, 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 the best there are, and here's how we chose them. And also here, you don't want to put it together the wrong way. So one of the biggest mistakes you can make is this and that. But he looked directly in the camera, which meant he was looking me directly in the eye from that video. And my trust immediately went up because it was the owner of the company. Sometimes when we never talk to the owner of a company, we're just talking to their underlings, if you will, their employees. Those people aren't as motivated to gain our trust as the owner is. So when the owner does a video, that can be a huge way of reducing that barrier. Another way you can do it is through testimonials. I love testimonials. Now, a testimonial is basically someone saying, yes, I've used this product and it works just as advertised. I love it. Highly recommend it. Now, I've already told this one in at least one other video on how you get a good testimonial. Okay, but I'm going to give you the short version real quick. Now, stick with me because what I'm about to tell you is how, number one, how all the major companies get good testimonials. And when you hear me tell it to you, at first it's going to sound unethical. Okay, stick with me. It's not. Some of y'all just perked up when I said that, didn't you? You got to realize that no customer is ever going to give you a perfect testimonial because a perfect testimonial is 2 to 3 sentences long and it speaks to one of your competitive advantages. Now, what's a competitive advantage? A competitive advantage is something that makes you better than your competition, something they don't do that you do. Okay, so maybe you have better quality ingredients. Maybe you have more stores, so you have better convenience. Maybe you have lower prices, so it's better economics. But you have a competitive advantage, and chances are you have 5 or 6. So if you want to do this, then I'm going to give you some homework. I want you to come up with 5 or 6 competitive advantages that you have over your competition. Now, it can't be that you can't just talk bad about your competition. That's not one of your competitive advantages. In other words, saying, well, one of my competitive advantages is I don't cheat the customer. No, that's not a competitive advantage. Okay. It's got to be something like you have lower prices, you have better quality, and you can't use customer service. Don't you dare say we have better customer service. Customer service is the most useless testimonial you will ever get. I mean, if someone ever said, oh, I like Eric Spellman and his staff, they have the best customer service. That is a wasted testimonial because no one puts value in that anymore because everyone claims to have the best customer service. So don't you ever brag about your customer service because it won't make a hill of beans. So a good testimonial, let's say you're a baker. And so a good testimonial might be something like, I buy my birthday cakes there all the time because they use the freshest organic ingredients in the area. Highly recommend, period. That is a testimonial, an amazing testimonial. So here's what you're going to do. I want you to come up with 5 or 6 competitive advantages, and then you're going to write, and here comes the part that sounds unethical. You're going to actually write 5 or 6 testimonials based on those competitive advantages, one for each. So you're actually going to write one down like, their products have the highest quality ingredients. I would never use anybody else. Highly recommend them! Exclamation point. Okay. And that's a testimonial. Now, some of y'all are going, Eric, I will not fake a testimonial. I'm not asking you to fake it. I'm asking you to write it. And then I'm not asking you to put it on your website or a landing page. I am asking you to call some people. I want you to call some of your best customers ever. And I want you to say, hey, let me read something to you. And you're going to read one of those testimonials to them. And you're going to say, is this how you feel? Would you mind if I put your name on that and put it on my website? In other words, you're going to get attribution permission, the permission to attribute that testimonial to them. And if anyone ever asks them, did you say that? And they go, yeah, that's exactly how I feel. Because why? You asked their permission. The reason you do this is because if you ask for testimonials, customers will give you garbage. They will give you a full page long thing, or they won't give you anything at all because they don't have time. But if you do the method I'm describing, come up with your 5 or 6 competitive advantages, write 5 or 6 testimonials, call customers and get attribution permission, you could have this done overnight and then end up with the best testimonials you've ever had. So yeah, I'm a big, and that, by the way, that's how every major company does it. Because trust me, customers cannot write what you need. So a good testimonial, 2 to 3 sentences at the most, little bite-sized piece, and it's got to speak to what makes you different than your competition. That can help lower the trust barrier or increase trust, if you will. Another example might be objective ratings. So for instance, if there is an organization that measures, how many mistakes you make or does inspections or something like that, you need to brag about that because, it's kind of like why people put on there that, they have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. Okay. They're basically saying that there is a third-party organization that says we do a great job handling complaints. Okay. So if you have anything like that, or maybe there's an inspection, or maybe it's FDA, or maybe it's what other organization helps determine that you're putting out a quality product or service, those can be braggable, but only if it'll make a difference in a customer's mind. If there is some obscure organization that is giving you an A+ and no one's heard of that organization, then it's really of no benefit. Next, you must have a valuable trade. Okay. Now, this is where we get into some psychology. You've got to realize that people make decisions, and I mean every decision in their life based on only 2 things. Every decision you make in your life is only based on 2 things: greed and fear. That's it. You either want something you do not currently possess, greed, or you're afraid of the consequences of something if you do it or don't do it, fear. And I'll be honest, fear is a better motivator than greed. But both are valuable in the marketing world. You see, the way to think of it is your personal information has a value associated with it, and you won't just give it to someone for free, but you will trade for it. And to trade for it, you're saying, what do I trade? Well, think of it this way. When you went to a conference, before the pandemic, that you went to a conference, there was always a vendor area. And in the vendor area, there were vendors in little booths. And every one of these booths had a table. And on that table was a fishbowl. And in that fishbowl were business cards. Now, those business cards are from the attendees. Now, how did those business cards get into the fishbowl? I mean, was the vendor going around pickpocketing everyone for them? No. The attendees were happily putting their business cards in those fishbowls. Why? I mean, their information has a value and they're not just going to give it away. So why are those business cards in those fishbowls? Because that attendee either wanted to win the iPad, or they wanted the free luggage tag, or the t-shirt, or the koozie, or you see what I'm saying? They traded their personal information for something that they considered of greater value. And that's what we have to come up with on this landing page, is we have to offer them something that they will see as greater value than what we're asking from them, their personal information. I'm telling you, it's all psychological. If you understand the psychology of this, you're going to be getting leads left and right. And like I said, people will trade their information, but they will not just give it to you for asking. And that's why no one's filling out your contact us form. Can we just talk? No one's going to just fill that out because it says contact us. No one. But I'm also not saying you need to go out and buy a whole bunch of promotional items. I'm not saying you need to order 1,000 koozies and give it to everyone who fills out your form. It's not what I'm saying. You see, a good trade just has to have value to the customer, not to you. In other words, it doesn't have to cost you a thing as long as it has value to the person seeking it. And to that end, the easiest way to give something that costs you nothing and yet get information back from them, which is very valuable, is to offer them something digital, like information that helps them make a better decision. Think of a house, okay? You know, I'll just go back to the realtor example. Now, buying or selling a house can be the largest financial transaction that someone will ever make. And so there's a lot of fear. You hear that? There's a lot of fear involved. If I can help someone not fear it, then they'll be happier. And the way we do that is by giving them information that will help them not be as scared. So a good trade might be a report, a digital report, top 10, and it might be labeled or titled top 10 mistakes you can't afford to make when choosing a realtor. Okay. Now, top 10 mistakes you can't afford to make. What is that? That speaks to fear, the fear of making a mistake. It could also be 10 ways to increase the value of your house 25% before you sell. See, that's greed. Make more money on the sale. You can go both ways, but you've got to realize that what you offer them must be something that they really, really want. So I tell people all the time, think of your product and think of your service. How do they help them not have a bad situation? In other words, what is it about that product that can assuage their fears? What is it about that product that can make them feel like they're going to gain something from it? Like a landscaper who buys a certain mower, a lawn mower, he can cut more lawns in less time, meaning he makes more money. So you can speak to greed, whereas a car, with airbags, you might buy a car with airbags versus a car without airbags. Why? Because you fear getting in an accident, and that helps you deal with that fear. So think of what the trade would be digitally, okay? The kind of information that you would offer that people, number one, want, that would help them either assuage their fear or help them gain something they don't personally possess. Here comes one of my favorite parts. Your landing page has got to have powerful words, and I mean powerful words. Words are the most underutilized thing on the planet because everyone gets really sloppy and lazy. I'll just be honest, lazy. The reason Stephen King sells a lot of books is because he understands the power of words. Words can create pictures in your mind. Words can create stories. But it's not just any words. I mean, anyone could throw words on a piece of paper, but someone who knows how to use the right words in the right place can create magic. And that's what we're trying to do here. So we're wanting very specific words because, I mean, be honest, you can't deny me on this one. Be honest, your little contact us ain't doing anything for you. So rule number one, people are sheep. Now, I know it sounds like I'm about to go down some political path. I'm not. But in the marketing world, you've got to realize that people are sheeple. They tend to do what you tell them to do, and they do it as a group. Okay? And so you need to realize that when you were born and as you grew up as a child, you learned, and it was back practically, maybe even literally, beat into you that if you did not do what you were told to do, there'd be negative consequences. Okay? So growing up, we were taught just to do it. And if they said to do it, we do it. Believe it or not, everyone still has that today. And so even as adults, even though we have the ability to say no, if we don't have a reason to say no, the answer will most likely be yes. Did you hear that? The way marketing works is this. As long as people don't have a reason to say no, they most likely will say yes. And so you've got to use that. That's why we're going to use active verbs. Active verbs, there's two types of words. There's passive verbs and active verbs. A verb is an action, okay? And so a passive verb is like is and are. That doesn't paint a picture in your head at all. They're more like, they just connect sentences. They connect nouns together and adjectives. But a powerful, an active verb is like shop or buy or run or, any kind of verb that creates a picture in your head of either something being done, something like that, flee, like that's how Stephen King does it. He chooses the right active verbs because flee is the same as run, right? But it puts a different picture in your head. And so if there's a monster chasing me, I think I would rather flee. Does that make sense? Choosing the right word to create the right picture is key. And by active verbs, well, don't be polite. Can I just tell you that? Don't be polite. Don't you ever say please. I know this goes against what your mother taught you, but on websites and in marketing, we're never polite. We never say please. We never say, please go click on our link. No, because please implies that they have a choice. I don't want them to have a choice. I want them to click on it. And not only click on it, I want them to click on it now. Okay? And I know that sounds so rude, but all you have to do is look at the largest websites out there and you'll see that it works. I remember back in the old days of Amazon, one of their first menus was called products. And that's how you went and started searching through all their different, all their different products. Well, they decided to start playing around with words. So then they changed that to buy products. And buy is actually an active verb. But then they discovered that fewer people clicked on it. Now, why would fewer people click on buy products? Well, guess what? It scared all the little grandmas and grandpas because they saw the word buy. And if they clicked that button, they thought they were committed to something. So they didn't click on it. So Amazon thought, said, okay, we can't use buy products. Why don't we say shop? Because shopping is fun. Shopping implies you can put it back if you don't want it. That's why we have shopping carts. That's why they're called shopping carts, because it gives people a freedom to believe that they haven't committed until they check out, because they understand the grocery store metaphor. And so that's just being applied to stores. So Amazon eventually said, okay, we're going to do shop. And they got a lot more clicks. But then they added one word and it tripled their clicks. The word now. Simply by telling people to do it now, believe it or not, got 3 times as many clicks. I know it ain't polite, okay? I know you'd rather say please shop now and thank you for visiting. No, shop now. Also, with a landing page, you need to understand your 2 most powerful friends. One's called urgency and one's called scarcity, okay? The reason shop now works, the word now says what? Urgency. Do it now. Don't wait. This actually works, and I can prove to you that it works, is if you think, I tell people all the time, you want to learn marketing? You go watch all of them after 10 o'clock commercials on TV. The 30-minute little shows trying to sell you copper pans. What are those called? There's like long commercials is basically what they are, but they're like 30 minutes. And what you will see is that you'll hear them say something like this. Order in the next 10 minutes and you'll get blah, blah, blah. See what they're trying to do? Urgency. They want you to act now. Okay? And that actually works. If people feel like they're about to miss out on a deal, then they will call. And you know good and well that was a pre-recorded thing, and they have no idea when it's being aired. And so calling in the next 10 minutes, they don't know. It's marketing. Scarcity is even better. All you have to do is, think of the Home Shopping Network. If you've ever watched Home Shopping Network or QVC or one of those, you'll always see that when they're selling a particular product, there's a countdown timer. And it's basically saying how many of them they have left. And you see that counter slowly counting down. Now, why do you think they're doing that? Because they want you to feel that this item is scarce and it's getting even scarcer. Okay? And so the fear of missing out, also called FOMO, FOMO, fear of missing out, is a very powerful marketing technique. So understand that urgency and scarcity can really come in handy in getting people to respond to you. Now, a lot of y'all might be saying, Eric, are we manipulating people with all of this? Yes, we are. It's called marketing, and there's nothing unethical about it. Unless the only thing that can be unethical is if you're promising something and not meeting that promise. Okay? Then it's unethical. It's dishonest. So if you're going to make a promise, make sure that it's true. If you're actually running out of something, don't lie and in the back of your mind know that you have 10,000 more in a warehouse, but you're telling people you only have 5 left. Don't lie, but use urgency and scarcity. It makes a big difference. Next, you must have a small capture form. A good landing page has a small capture form on it. Remember, it's a single page, an orphaned page, and its goal is to get a conversion. Its goal is to convince people to tell you who they are. So this is the part where they tell you who they are. It's a little form on that landing page. But there's a reason I put small on there. Because the more you ask, the fewer people will fill it out. You got to realize that everyone on the internet is lazy. And everyone on the internet has ADD, okay? How many times have you ever seen a large form? You just wanted to ask them a question, but they have this large form asking your name and your address, and your city, state, phone number, mother's maiden name, all this garbage, and you're not going to fill it out. Why? Because you don't have time. And also, the more information that you ask, that's going to require an even bigger trade. I ain't giving you my mother's maiden name for a koozie. You better give me a bank account for something like that. Okay? So what we want to do is ask for the least amount of information. The least amount. We don't need all of that because keep in mind, all I need is enough to contact them. If I need more information to make the sale, I can get that later. All I want right now is just barely enough information to contact them. So what would that be? The 4 things that I recommend, and yes, I only recommend you have 4 things on there at the most. Name, email, phone, and another one called Ask Us Anything. Okay, leave it open-ended on the last one. So name, email, phone, and Ask Us Anything. Those are the 4 things that you ask. Now, some of y'all might be saying, well, Eric, why are you asking for phone and email? Because can't somebody, all you need is one to contact them, right? I learned this one the hard way because I discovered that if you just ask for email or you just ask for phone, you'd be surprised how many people cannot type their contact information incorrectly the first time. And they'll get one number wrong in their phone number. They'll get one letter wrong in their email. And then you can't get a hold of them. And then those people are going to think you're ignoring them. And it wasn't your fault. It's because they can't spell. So I always ask for phone and email. That way one is the backup to the other. If I have to pick one over the other, I'd rather have phone than email. Okay? Because that way I can talk to them directly. But I ask for both. Okay, next you need an effective delivery system. In other words, getting these leads. So I tell people all the time, test your form mail system. And if you haven't gone and tested your contact us form on your own website, even though I really don't consider that a landing page, if you've never tested to even see if it works, then you're probably missing out on a lot of leads from a lot of people who are getting frustrated that you're not calling them back or contacting them. So one of the first things you want to do when you create a landing page is you want to test a form. Put some information in there and then see how long it takes you to get it. Now, keep in mind, we don't just want a form to mail. I don't just need an email every time. Your phone number better be at the top of every page in your website. Did you hear me? I truly believe that your phone number should be on every page. Because haven't you ever been to a website and all you really wanted to do is call them, and to find their phone number was an act of Congress? I mean, you basically had to be like a sleuth looking around the website for a phone number. Don't make it hard. I know it's low tech, but I would rather have the lead. I don't care. Make it as easy as possible for people to contact you, and people who just want to do it by phone, let them do it. It's still a valid lead. Some people go, well, Eric, I don't want them tying up our phone lines. Get more phone lines. These are leads. These are customers. It's like some people don't know what's good for their own business. Also, check your direct messages. A lot of times, people will direct message you, like on Facebook. Good example. If you have a Facebook page for your business and you're posting to it, believe it or not, do you know how people want to ask you questions? Direct message. Are you even checking your direct messages on your page? You never know how many thousands of dollars you're missing out simply because you're not using Facebook the way you should, or another piece of social media. Also, on your form to mail, where you have a form they fill out, they hit submit, it goes to email. Have it sent to more than one person. If you just have it sent to one person, what happens when that person goes on vacation? What happens when that person gets hit by a bus? You lose all your leads. We call that a single point of failure. So make sure that whatever form you have that people are filling out on your website, and especially those on landing pages, that be going to more than one person. Okay? Because also that one person might be so busy, they don't get back to it as quick as they should. And I'll be honest, if you don't get back to people within 24 hours, they're going to go somewhere else. Some people even less. Okay? And I'm talking weekends as well. If you get a form on Saturday morning and you don't get back to them until Monday morning, you've probably lost the deal. This is not for the faint of heart. Set your policy for reply times. In other words, your company needs to have, if you're not the one receiving these form to mails, then you need to set what that policy is. And you need to say, we're going to get back to people within 24 hours. That really should be the rule. I'll be honest with you. That should be the maximum amount of time people wait to reply to someone filling out a form. 24 hours. And once again, I'm not talking Monday through Friday. I'm talking Sunday through Saturday. Okay. And then you got to have a confirmation page. Let them know you got it. In other words, when they hit submit, don't just have it go back to the website. They're like, well, did it work? Did I hit something wrong? It just went away. There needs to be a page come up that says something to the effect of, hey, we got your information and we'll be calling you soon. Now on this little confirmation page, guess what? Offer an upsell, offer them a coupon, offer them something. Okay. Always keep offering something. Don't believe me? Go to Amazon. They'll even hit you up if you throw a bunch of stuff in your shopping cart and then never check out. You'll start getting emails going, hey, here's a coupon. Why don't you just buy the stuff that's in your cart right now? Also, tell them the deadline for you to respond. In other words, on the confirmation page, you need to say, we will get back with you in 24 hours. Tell them so they're not wondering, I filled out that form 30 seconds ago. How come they haven't called me? Some people actually have that kind of crazy belief. So if you can't get back to someone within 24 hours, then tell them that you will get back to them within 24 hours. And then when you do get back with them within 30 seconds, they'll go, wow. But if you haven't told them when you're getting back with them, they may wonder why they haven't heard from you in 5 hours, 6 hours, 12 hours. But if you tell them 24, you're setting the expectation. Remind them they made a good decision on that confirmation page. Remind them that them giving you their information was a good decision. Kind of like, hey, you've taken the first step. Congratulations. We're very excited for you. Here's some things you can do while you're waiting for our reply. Here's some things you can read. Go watch this video. And then we got to measure the results on our landing page. And I tell people all the time, you cannot manage what you cannot measure. You cannot manage what you cannot measure. And if you're not looking at whether your forms are even working or not, then what's the point of even having them? People ask me all the time, what should be my reply rate? Like if 100 people look at it, how many actual people filling out the form should I get? And I tell people in the industry for online forms, your minimum should be 2.35%, all the way up to 5% if you're really good at it. Okay. That's kind of what you want, somewhere in that range. If you're getting 0% right now, it's because you're not doing it right. If you're getting more than 5%, wow. Keep going. Don't look back. Also, you need to understand and reduce the bounce rate. Every page on your website has what we call a bounce rate. The bounce rate is the percentage of people who land on a web page or even a landing page and don't do anything. They don't click on anything. They don't fill anything out. They land on it, look around, and leave. They bounce off. Your bounce rate had better be below 20%. Okay? You're saying, where do I go to find that? Google Analytics, your web statistics. You need to call your web guy, whoever that is, and have them put Google Analytics on your website. It costs nothing, except maybe a little labor on their part, but Google doesn't charge anything for it. And it's a way for you to look at the statistics of your website. If you're just relying on your web host to tell you, or the person who built your website to tell you your web statistics, once again, that's not good. You need something objective, something where you know if it's working or not. And Google Analytics is a way to go. And Google will show you the bounce rate for every page on your site. You want it to be less than 20%. A high number is bad. Also, you need to figure out what leads are worth to you. And I don't have time to go into that now. I've gone over it before, and I think twice now, in talking about leads. And that's how to put a dollar amount on leads. Every lead you get, whether they buy or not, every lead is worth something dollar-wise. Okay. And then one of the reasons you want to find that out is when you find out how much you're willing to pay for a lead, then it can help you. Like if you're doing pay-per-click ads, like on Google, if you're going to pay for advertising, then it can help you decide whether it's working or not. But you can only do that when you're comparing dollars to dollars. So you must understand what the value of a lead is. And there is a mathematical formula for that. But like I said, I don't have time to go over it now. But I have gone over it in my other leads talk. So let's look at some examples. This is a landing page for Shopify. Now, Shopify, what they do is websites where people actually sell products. They like provide a shopping cart to small businesses, and they're my favorite, actually. If you're building a website where you're actually going to be selling something and taking credit cards, Shopify, in my opinion, is the best route to go. I want you to look, however, at their landing page. This is a landing page, and their goal is to what? Capture your email address, so they can start emailing you. So notice the words that they're using. Okay, sell online with Shopify. Notice the powerful verb, sell. Okay, so it's very quick, very small, very short. It's not covered in text. Notice what they say next. Trusted by over 400,000 businesses. What are they trying to do here? That's right. Reduce the trust barrier. Because They're asking for your email address. They're basically saying, trust us. And that's their way of saying you can trust us. And then underneath that, it's enter your email address, and then notice what's on the button. Does their button say submit? No, it says get started. Do you see how their choice of words encourages people to do it? And notice they're not saying please. So underneath that, in very small words, and you may not be able to read this, you can when you get it, because a copy of this presentation you can get. It says, try Shopify free for 14 days, no risk and no credit card. Well, hey, risk-free, no credit card, no chance of failure. Oh yeah, I'll do that. Once again, they're using that to reduce the barrier, the trust barrier. Then they show a little picture of a website created by Shopify to let people know, hey, they can make good looking websites. Let's go to another one. This is called TransferWise. This is a landing page for TransferWise. And it's kind of like PayPal. It's a way for you to send money around. Now take a look at the words that first catch your attention. A cheaper way to send money internationally. Notice how much that little sentence says. A cheaper way to send money internationally. It basically tells you exactly what they do in one sentence. Have you ever done that? Have you ever boiled what you do down to basically one sentence or even a phrase? And notice what they say underneath that. Join over 3 million people who left their banks to get a great exchange rate and a low fee every time. Do you see that? Once again, they're saying, hey, 3 million people trust us. Won't you? The trust barrier is real. Underneath that, you'll see it says, see why it's so cheap in 1 minute. Why did they put in 1 minute? Because they don't want you to think that you're going to waste your time. Hey, in 1 minute, you have 1 minute. Everyone's got 1 minute. I'd be willing to listen to your spiel in 1 minute. If you can promise me you can do it in 1 minute. Over here on the right, they kind of show you an example of how easy it is. Send money, receive money. Wow, it looks easy, like one click and I'm done. But then look at the bottom right. Get started. And what color is it? Green. Green is a good color. Green is a successful color, and green draws the eye from all that blue. Or you can compare price. In other words, they're going to send you to a contrast and compare screen where they're talking about what most banks charge and what they charge. Don't get me started on building a compare and contrast, because that's a whole marketing thing in and of itself. But realize they're basically assuaging people's fears about what might go wrong with this. Okay? It's all in this landing page. Okay, here's one called Lyft, and you've heard of this one. They're like Uber, it's ride share. And this is for people who may want a job with Lyft. So this is the landing page. And what Lyft is going after is getting more drivers. So look what it says. Make up to $35 an hour driving your car. You see what kind of teaser that is? You think that grabs someone's attention? Of course it does. And then it says, apply now. It doesn't say sign up. You're never going to see anyone say sign up because that's stupid. No one wants to sign up for anything. But apply is okay. Enter your info and then download the Lyft app to create your driver profile. See how easy they make this sound? Now they do add a lot. They do ask for a lot of information, which I'm not a big fan of. But notice what it says down here, become a driver. Do you see how that visually creates a picture in the head of the person? And then there's even a little calculator at the bottom where you can find out how much you can make. This one's a fun one, the Professional Wingman. It's a website that basically teaches you how to date, okay? For those people who think they're terrible at dating, it's like your guy, like your coach. And I think Will Smith played that in some movie where he's like a coach helping people get dates. So notice what the first words you see. Learn how to what? And what's in bold? Get more dates today. Why did they put today on there? See? You're seeing the urgency, aren't you? You're seeing that what I'm saying is used by all these companies. Trust me, you're never going to look at ads again because you're now going to start understanding why they're using the words they're using. Notice they said click, they say get my complimentary coaching experience. Now, complimentary is another way of saying free. Free can be seen as, people don't trust the word free because they always think there's a catch. So one way you can say free without saying free is complimentary. Cool, huh? This one is pretty good because Code Academy, and it's spelled really weird, but they teach people how to program if they want to become a programmer. Learn to code interactively, what? For free. Once again, very simple. Tasters Club. This one is about kind of a whiskey of the month club. Think of it that way. Get great whiskey every month and learn all about it. And then there's learn more and join now. Notice it says join, not sign up. Not a fan of sign up. Sign up has no value to it, but join, everyone wants to join a community, join a VIP, join a group. We're humans, we seek groups. So joining is a good thing. Okay. But notice it says get great whiskey every month. So look what I'm getting. And then look at the picture, how the picture reinforces it. They make it easy. Okay. Questions on landing pages. I've been so patient. I had so much information to cover. I'm glad I made it all the way through. Any questions on anything I've gone over about landing pages?
You had a ton of information, and I was frantically writing down the fact that the phone number needs to be on the top of every page. I was like, oh my gosh, we definitely need to do that.
Why make it hard? Why make it hard?
I know. I was thinking, oh no, we need to take that because yes, if you go back to the home pages, it's buried there. So yes, very good advice. I want to remind everyone about the no cost confidential counseling. Sign up for that. We have local centers, so it's not like you're just going to be. I'm down in the southeast part of New Mexico, and you can go to one of your local centers near you and talk to someone in the community. It's no cost and it's confidential. Also, I want to remind, I chatted over to everyone links to our YouTube page because again, I have been getting a lot of emails and requests to find Eric Spellman's webinars on I gave you the page, YouTube page and the link to our website because he builds from number one all the way through. So you're always catching information and building. So when he said he had one of the other webinars, go and revisit that. And also in my brain, it's the last thing. I don't remember that Will Smith movie. I do remember it, but I can't remember the title. And it's gonna bug me until I figure out the title. I know.
He was a coach. He was a dating coach.
He was.
Oh, I'll think of it and yell it out in a second, random.
Yeah, and if anyone can remember that movie, please type it into the Q&A. This is your last call for questions. And I don't see any coming up. So Eric, your last words before we pop off.
Just remember what the goal of your website is. It's not a billboard, it's not a pamphlet. The goal of your website is to convert leads into people or sales. That's what you want. If it's not generating sales or generating leads, then your website was not built correctly.
And Catherine did chat over. She is looking for the previous webinars. I will send you the direct link. I chatted it up to, oh, it's Hitch. That was it. Thank you.
Yes.
Yay.
That's it.
So glad someone came through. And I'm glad that Catherine's with us today. I know she's said that she's getting really busy. So I'll make sure that I send over, Catherine, the direct link to our YouTube channel so you can pick up his videos. And we had a question. Let me make sure.
It was Donna saying thank you. She's so sweet.
Awesome. Okay, guys, we are done for today. If there's no more questions, thanks as all to Eric, and we will, thank you. Seamus says thank you. So we will see you all next time. You guys have a great day. Bye.